I'll recite a poem that it isn't obvious from the poem, but it owes something to um, Eric Temple Bell.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Temple Bell, when I first became acquainted with him in his writing, I didn't know he was a mathematician. All I knew is he wrote science fiction stories, and I had just, at that time, just discovered science fiction magazines. And I was very interested in them, and I was 14 years old at this time. But anyhow, he wrote under the name of John Taine, and I read in later years that he was a great embarrassment to his colleagues because he wrote science fiction stories for pulp magazines under a pen name.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, this particular story, to which I owe something, was called The Ultimate Catalyst. And what it was about was some professor who had invented a catalyst that was ultimate in that it would a catalyst, is supposed to accelerate any chemical reaction whatsoever, if it's an ultimate one. Ordinarily, a catalyst speeds up some particular chemical reaction, but this was a science fiction story, and this professor, he had invented an ultimate catalyst. And now he had a daughter, and him and his daughter were in the jungles of Brazil, I think it was, or someplace far removed from ordinary civilization. But this professor was up on a platform or something where he was speaking to a crowd of natives. And he had a flask in his hand, and he said, in this flask is the ultimate catalyst and will dissolve anything. Why it didn't dissolve the flask was not, it might have been explained, but I don't remember if it was or not. Anyway, there was, no, he had a daughter there, and there was some man that was with them, and I don't know who it was. But anyhow, what happened was that this professor accidentally dropped the flask, and the ultimate catalyst got scattered around through the grass and brush and everything around there, and started accelerating all kinds of chemical reactions in the plants, so that it just went like wildfire. And the professor's daughter, and this other man that was there with them, tried to do what they could to stop this ultimate catalyst from going on forever and just destroying everything, So they set the whole forest on fire, and then they were going. They got out in the river on a raft, and were going down the raft toward the ocean. It might have been the Amazon River for all I know. It was some river. And as they were going along, the story ended where the author writes, Only once did she look back. And then he said, the flames that she herself had kindled flapped against the black sky. Well, when I read that, I thought that last line, I can do something wonderful with that, and I knew about what I had in mind. But no, that was when I was 14, something like that, 15 maybe. I think it was probably closer to 15. Well, I never put this idea aside. I knew I was going to do something with it. And anyway, on my 18th birthday, I joined the Army. And when I was 19, I was in the Field Artillery, and I was down at Camp Roberts, California, and I was working in camp headquarters as a typist. And I had formed a friendship with a fellow named Rex Rogers, who didn't have any interest in science fiction and hardly any in science, but he had a great interest in poetry and other kinds of creative writing. And so I got very well acquainted with him, and we usually didn't go to the mess hall where dinners were served. I just paid for my meals out of my own pocket. I don't know what he did. I guess he had to too. But anyway, we'd go to the service club and eat. And at this point in time, I had written quite a bit of poetry, but nothing using that idea about only once did she look back. The flames that she herself had kindled flapped against the black sky. Well, anyway, one night at the service club, I had, we played various games. I had given him a problem of what four-letter, three-syllable words he could think of, and he thought of some that I couldn't think of. But on this particular occasion, I had a different question for him. I said, can you think of a four-syllable word that means the same as fire? And he made some guesses, and they weren't what I had in mind. I had in mind the word oxidation. But he guessed the word conflagration. And when he said that, I thought, well, that certainly fits. And it seems like a very good word, and I knew I'd seen the word before, but it was only then that I realized that conflagration meant a huge fire. So then I began thinking about this ultimate catalyst and the big fire and all that.